All right. Well, I want to thank all of you for joining me and City Council President Brian Gomes this morning as we mourn the loss of our Police Chief David Provencher. I really want to reiterate just how shocked and saddened the entire city is at his sudden and unexpected loss. The city last night lost an outstanding police chief and a terrific individual. I want to extend my prayers to Dave's family. We will do everything in our power to support them, as we did last night in the emergency room, and going forward today as arrangements are made, and in the days and weeks and months ahead. Dave Provencher leaves behind a legacy of a more modern and effective police department and a stronger community. Dave was appointed Chief of Police in April of 2011 and continued to serve during the entirety of my administration. He had 35 years of experience on the police force, having been sworn in as an officer in 1980 and served in virtually every capacity in the department over the course of those 35 years, including as acting chief on 2 occasions before he became the permanent chief. I want to say a few words first about Dave Provencher, the police chief, and then a few words about Dave Provencher, the man. The job of police chief in New Bedford and so many other cities across America these days is difficult, complex, and ever-changing. You have to be a jack of all trades, really, a superman of sorts to be effective. The job requires a knowledge of the law, of course, as well as the craft of policing, but it also requires a deftness of personality and an ability to empathize with the people, not only whom you're seeking to keep safe, but also those who deal with offenders in the community as well. The job isn't just about toughness and about locking people up. It's about being a guardian of the community, and that's exactly the way that Dave saw it. We live in a time in which police departments are coming under increased scrutiny, in many instances for very good reason. We've seen horrific incidents over the course of the last few years in places like Chicago recently, as well as Ferguson and Staten Island and many other places, in which police departments have lost touch with their mission. That hasn't happened here in New Bedford. It hasn't happened under Dave Provencher's leadership. Quite the opposite. We had, for instance, a very difficult incident 3 years ago involving a young man named Malcolm Gracia, who had stabbed a police officer and then ultimately was shot as 2 other officers defended themselves against him. In the wake of that, a lot of things could have gone off the rails, and but we were lucky that we had a police chief that, as I said, understood not only the craft of policing, but also understood that in order to keep the community's confidence, in order to carry out their mission in pursuing justice, the police department had to throw the doors open to the daylight and bring people in and enable the community to understand what had happened that day, but also to understand why police do what they do, and to open up the department to feedback directly from the community. And so while other communities have struggled with engaging certain communities in their cities, we here in New Bedford have been able to have a police department that commands the confidence of the population of our residents, and that's a tremendous credit to Dave Provencher. As many of you have heard me say before, my previous job was as a federal prosecutor in Boston, and in that capacity I dealt with police departments not only all across Massachusetts and New England, but all across the country, as well as other law enforcement agencies. And our police department here in New Bedford stood out as one that maintained heightened levels of professionalism that really worked to improve itself all the time, and that was very effective in keeping its citizens safe. And that has been has been emphatically the case under Dave Provencher. We have, here's someone who, as a professional, always worked on his leadership skills, who saw himself as a public servant first and foremost. It is a difficult thing for anyone in his shoes to do. After all, police chiefs tend to, in most places, work their way up through the ranks and have at some time have to command the folks that you once called friends. And Dave recognized that it is lonely at the top, but that you still can, while commanding the respect of folks, still be someone they can approach and folks whom one can support. Dave, and that takes someone with a prodigious emotional reserve to pull that off, but also the clarity of judgment that he brought to everything. Dave was a very intelligent man. I think he surprised a lot of folks with breaking the stereotype, I think sometimes, including many members of the media, and the level of sophistication when it came to public relations and interacting with media at many levels. This is the kind of guy he was. But at the same time, he was a New Bedford guy, born and raised, rooted in the community, and he brought all those skills, prodigious skills, many dimensions to the job. As Dave Provencher, the person Dave Provencher, the person, persevered under considerable adversity. He was diagnosed nearly 20 years ago with throat cancer, and that was something that he had battled and had a radical surgery performed, chemo and radiation. He was a big, strapping guy, an Army veteran who had to refigure how to live his life, and he did so. He did so without self-pity. He did so without cashing it in, without saying, "Well, I'm just going to go on disability." He continued to strive on with tremendous energy and idealism, and that's what the kind of guy he was. He took the hand he was dealt with grace and with toughness, and set a tremendous example not only for officers on the force, but for everyone in the community. And he did it with keeping a great sense of humor. The kind of guy who, if you knew Dave, you'd love his quick and droll wit. I can remember there are many stories about Dave. I can remember 2 years ago, he texted me when some incident occurred that might draw media attention, and he let me know that there was a fire at the Burger King in the South End, and he said, sounds like that flame broil thing got away from them. That's the kind of guy he was, always with a quick anecdote, a quick joke. He was funny, but totally devoted to the job in the most serious of ways. We, at this point, do not have details on arrangements. We believe we'll have that later today. I've ordered flags to be flown at half-staff at all city buildings. And with that, let me call up City Council President Brian Gomes.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'm City Council President Brian Gomes, and also Chairman of Public Safety. I've not only known Dave Provencher as a police officer, I knew him as a friend. His meeting him was a long time ago, as his dad had a barbershop on Allen Street in the city of New Bedford and cut my hair for many, many years until his passing. Dave Provencher was not only a chief, he was a man committed to the community. And when I say committed to the community, he walked the streets of New Bedford. He wasn't a chief that hid behind the desk. When there was something wrong and you called him, you got immediate action. If you had proposed something on the city council and he thought it was out of range of what the police department could do or what we could do as a city, he picked up the phone and he talked to you about it. We had an open policy with the city council. I know, speaking on behalf of the entire city council, we send our condolences out to his family, the department. It is a very sad day for the city of New Bedford. Dave was a committed man, not only to the city of New Bedford where he was brought up from the day he was born, stayed here, committed to working in this department to the top office of chief, and then never turning his back on anyone. As I said, being involved in the community, you don't get a chief too many times that attends functions with you, from Christmas gatherings to special events, just making himself accessible to not only us, but to the community in general. And that will always be respected. He will be a long time remembered for his quick wit, as Mayor has said many times when the emotion got tight or whatever, Dave could come up and loosen it up just a little, just to make sure that everybody stayed composed and took care of business on behalf of the safety and well-being of the city. I stand here today very saddened to speak and be with the mayor on this occasion, as we've stood in this room for many other occasions that are positive for the city. It is a sad day for the city of New Bedford, and Dave Provencher, as chief of the city of New Bedford, will be missed. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
I can take questions.
Hey, when was the last time you saw the chief? Do you remember?
Well, I was there last night, Mario, in the emergency room, but end of last week, we would meet often, and we'd interact more than once a week on a routine basis. Yeah. And we'd have a standing meeting every 2 weeks in my office, but we interacted all the time.
He seemed in good spirits, good health. Nothing to indicate.
Yeah, well, so his health, he since his cancer surgery, I think was about 17 years ago, he's had to deal with the effects of having to, regulate his eating, and that's just something that's been present in his life. But otherwise, he was fine. Yeah.
I understand he was at Santa Run on Saturday. What happened between Santa Run and the very next day? What happened?
Well, I'm sorry. What do you?
On Saturday, he was at Santa Run with all those hundreds of people, and then the very next day he was in the hospital. How did he get to the hospital?
Yeah, so the cause of death was respiratory arrest, and I don't want to get into the details of how that occurred, but suffice it to say that contrary to what has been reported in some places, his death was not caused by a recurrence of his cancer.
So
it was an unexpected death. Yeah.
So there was no link to his death in any kind of residual treatment or anything?
He didn't have a recurrence of cancer, right?
Does he have a wife or children?
He does. He is separated from his wife, Mary. He has 2 sons, Jeff and Matt Provencher. Jeff is a cadet on the police department. Matt is an attorney who practices in Warwick.
Son is a cadet with the New
Bedford Police Department, yeah. And one thing I just wanted to emphasize too is part of his legacy, and I think I glossed over this, but there were a number of really important achievements that I think bear noting. New Bedford in the last year has had a dramatic drop in violent crime. Whereas many cities across the country right now are seeing sharp upticks, especially in gun violence, we're seeing quite the opposite here. And it is, I believe, a tribute to his approach to policing, which is both community-based as well as based in a recognition that in a city of roughly our size, 100,000, that the focus often needs to be on key impact players who can cause a disproportionate amount of disruption in neighborhoods. When he got on the force, he reformed the Internal Affairs Department, which I think greatly boosted morale in the department, and because he had to make some tough decisions. And that's sort of, again, the kind of, as Carl Sandburg said of Abraham Lincoln, it's the iron fist and the velvet glove. And you need to have effective leaders who are both strong and empathetic at the same time. And he was someone who exemplified both in all the appropriate contexts. We have effectively, under his leadership, implemented the Safe and Successful Youth Initiative program, the SSYI program, which reaches out to the most troubled kids in the community. It's a way of suppressing violence. Same thing with the so-called Shannon Grant program, which is a youth program that relates directly to potential for gun violence among certain youthful offenders. He managed the finances of the department with the utmost skill, which in any city, but particularly ours, is a very, very difficult task these days. And he interacted with the city council in a very transparent way and in an effective way. And he, as many of you know who dealt with him in the media, he was very direct, he was transparent, he was informative, and understood your craft with a level of sophistication that is really rare among police chiefs in the city, in a mid-sized American city. So I can't say enough about the guy. He was an enormous asset to this community and just a thoroughly decent man and someone I really deeply cared for.
Mayor, without taking away from obviously the warning and but practically speaking, what happened now at the department? How?
Yeah. So Deputy Chief David Lizotte is, as would be the case, presumptively in charge of the department now in terms of appointing and acting. Chief Mario will do that once all the arrangements have been completed. Okay. All right. All right, great.
An acting chief will be appointed after
Yes. Yeah.
the arrangements.
After funerals, all done. Yeah, we'll have some announcements then. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. Yeah. Thanks, Mark.